Hello, beloved patrons, and welcome to another Nocturnal Transmissions Patreon subscriber exclusive episode. That precious every third episode where we share something special just with our inner circle. Oh, you shall have a fishy on a little dishy. You shall have a fishy when the boat comes in. We've been fishing the dark waters of horror fiction once again, gentle listener, and we've landed you a whopper. We interrupt this episode for a brief announcement. This is a Patreon subscriber exclusive episode. Nevertheless, we will still be sharing this little taster, as it were, with you, our unsubscribed friends of the podcast. If you wish to hear this and our other Patreon exclusive episodes in their entirety, just visit patreon.com/Nocturnal Transmissions. All right, on with the show. Ravenly Weasels. Welcome, Ravenly, and thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, Nocturnal Transmissions is proud to present William Hope Hodgson's The Derelict. It's the material, said the old ship's doctor. The material plus the conditions, and maybe, he added slowly, a third factor. Yes, a third factor, but there. He broke off his half-meditative sentence and began to charge his pipe. Go on, Doctor, we said encouragingly, and with more than a little expectancy. We were in the smoke room of the Sand Lee running across the North Atlantic, and the Doctor was a character. He concluded the charging of his pipe and lit it, then settled himself and began to express himself more fully. The material, he said with conviction, is inevitably the medium of expression of the life force, the fulcrum, as it were, lacking which it is unable to exert itself, or indeed to express itself in any form or fashion that would be intelligible or evident to us. So potent is the share of the material in the production of that thing which we name life, and so eager the life force to express itself, that I am convinced it would, if given the right conditions, make itself manifest even through so hopeless seeming a medium as a simple block of sawn wood. For I tell you, gentlemen, the life force is both as fiercely urgent and as indiscriminate as fire, the destructor, yet which some are now growing to consider the very essence of life rampant. There is a quaint-seeming paradox there, he concluded, nodding his old grey head. Yes, Doctor, I said. In brief, your argument is that life is a thing, state, fact, or element, call it what you like, which requires the material through which to manifest itself, and that given the material, plus the conditions, the result is life. In other words, that life is an evolved product, manifested through matter and bred of conditions, eh? As we understand the word, said the old doctor. Though, mind you, there may be a third factor, but in my heart I believe that it is a matter of chemistry, conditions, and a suitable medium. But given the conditions, the brute is so almighty that it will seize upon anything through which to manifest itself. It is a force generated by conditions, But nevertheless, this does not bring us one iota nearer to its explanation, any more than to the explanation of electricity or fire. They are all three of the outer forces, monsters of the void. Nothing we can do will create any one of them. Our power is merely to be able, by providing the conditions, to make each one of them manifest to our physical senses. Am I clear?
Yes, Doctor, in a way you are, I said. But I don't agree with you, though I think I understand you. Electricity and fire are both what I might call natural things, but life is an abstract something, a kind of all-permeating wakefulness. Oh, I can't explain it, who could, but it's spiritual, not just a thing bred out of conditions like fire, as you say, or electricity. It's a horrible thought of yours. Life's a kind of spiritual mystery.
Easy, my boy, said the doctor, laughing gently to himself. Or else I may be asking you to demonstrate the spiritual mystery of life of the limpet, or the crab, shall we say?
He grinned at me with ineffable perverseness.
Anyway, he continued, as I suppose you've all guessed, I've a yarn to tell you in support of my impression that life is no more a mystery or a miracle than fire or electricity. But please to remember, gentlemen, that because we've succeeded in naming and making good use of these two forces, they're just as much mysteries, fundamentally, as ever. And anyway, the thing I'm going to tell you won't explain the mystery of life, but only give you one of my pegs on which I hang my feeling that life is, as I have said, a force made manifest through conditions, that is to say, natural chemistry, and that it can take for its purpose and need the most incredible and unlikely matter. For without matter it cannot come into existence, it cannot become manifest.
I don't agree with you, Doctor, I interrupted. Your theory would destroy all belief in life after death. It would—
Hush, Sonny, said the old man, with a quiet little smile of comprehension. Hark to what I've to say first. And anyway, what objection have you to material life after death? And if you object to a material framework, I would still have you remember that I'm speaking of life, as we understand the word in this, our life. Now, do be a quiet lad, or I'll never be done. It was when I was a young man, and that is a good many years ago, gentlemen. I had passed my examinations, but was so run down with overwork that it was decided that I had better take a trip to sea. I was by no means well off, and very glad in the end to secure a nominal post as doctor in a sailing passenger clipper running out to China. The name of the ship was the Beotopter, and soon after I had got all my gear aboard, she cast off, and we dropped down the Thames, and next day we were well away out in the Channel. The captain's name was Gannington, a very decent man, though quite illiterate. The first mate, Mr. Burleys, was a quiet, sternish, reserved man, very well read. The second mate, Mr. Selvin, was perhaps by birth and upbringing the most socially cultured of the three, but he lacked the stamina and indomitable pluck of the two others. He was more of a sensitive, and emotionally and even mentally the most alert man of the three. On our way out, we called at Madagascar, where we landed some of our passengers. Then we ran eastward, meaning to call at Northwest Cape. But about 100 degrees east, we encountered very dreadful weather, which carried away all our sails and sprung the jibboom and foretopgallant mast. The storm carried us northward for several hundred miles, and when it dropped us finally, we found ourselves in a very bad state. The ship had been strained and had taken some 3 feet of water through her seams. The main topmast had been sprung, in addition to the jibboom and foretopgallant mast.
2 of our boats had gone, as also one of the pigsties, with 3 fine pigs, this latter having been washed overboard but some half-hour before the wind began to ease, which it did quickly, though a very ugly sea ran for some hours after. The wind left us just before dark, and when morning came it brought splendid weather, a calm, mildly undulating sea and a brilliant sun, with no wind. It showed us also that we were not alone, for about 2 miles away to the westward was another vessel, which Mr. Selvin, the second mate, pointed out to me. "That's a pretty rum-looking packet, Doctor," he said, and handed me his glass. I looked through it at the other vessel and saw what he meant. At least, I thought I did. "Yes, Mr. Selvin," I said. "She's got a pretty old-fashioned look about her." He laughed at me in his pleasant way. "It's easy to see you're not a sailor, Doctor," he remarked. "There's a dozen rum things about her. She's a derelict, and has been floating round by the look of her for many a score of years. Look at the shape of her counter, and the bows and cutwater. She's as old as the hills, as you may say, and ought to have gone down to Davy Jones a long time ago. Look at the growths on her, and the thickness of her standing rigging. That's all salt incrustations, I fancy, if you notice the white colour. She's been a small bark, but don't you see she's not a yard left aloft? They've all dropped out of the slings, everything rotted away. Wonder the standing rigging hasn't gone too. I wish the old man would let us take the boat and have a look at her. She'd be well worth it." There seemed little chance, however, of this, for all hands were turned to and kept hard at it all day long, repairing the damage to the masts and gear, and this took a long while, as you may think. Part of the time I gave a hand, heaving on one of the deck capstans, for the exercise was good for my liver. Old Captain Gannington approved, and I persuaded him to come along and try some of the same medicine, which he did, and we grew very chummy over the job. We got talking about the derelict, and he remarked how lucky we were not to have run full tilt onto her in the darkness, for she lay right away to leeward of us, according to the way that we had been drifting in the storm. He also was of the opinion that she had a strange look about her, and that she was pretty old, but on this latter point he plainly had far less knowledge than the second mate, for he was, as I have said, an illiterate man, and knew nothing of seacraft beyond what experience had taught him. He lacked the book knowledge which the second mate had of vessels previous to his day, which it appeared the derelict was. "She's an old 'un, Doctor," was the extent of his observations in this direction. Yet when I mentioned to him that it would be interesting to go aboard and give her a bit of an overhaul, he nodded his head as if the idea had already been in his mind and accorded with his own inclinations. "When the work's over, Doctor," he said. "Can't spare the men now, you know. Got to get all ship-shape and ready as smart as we can, but we'll take my gig and go off in the second dog watch. The glass is steady and it'll be a bit of gam for us." That evening, after tea, the captain gave orders to clear the gig and get her overboard. The second mate was to come with us, and the skipper gave him word to see that 2 or 3 lamps were put into the boat, as it would soon fall dark. A little later, we were pulling across the calmness of the sea, with a crew of 6 at the oars, and making very good speed of it. Now, gentlemen, I have detailed to you with great exactness all the facts, both big and little, so that you can follow step by step each incident in this extraordinary affair. And I want you now to pay the closest attention. Well, there ends our little teaser, I'm afraid. If you would like to hear the rest of this story and our other Patreon-exclusive episodes, just join up on our Patreon page as a minion, acolyte, or cohort. The choice is yours. Normal services will be resumed in a fortnight's time. We look forward to seeing you then, gentle listener.